Hi, I'm Jamie Toll. I'm going to read two books today. The first is called The House That Biff Built. It's by Janet Campbell, and it's illustrated by Tom Cook, and it features Jim Henson's Sesame Street Muppets. This is the house that Biff built. This is the plan the architect drew for the house that Biff built. These are the machines that dug up the ground to make the excavation for the house that Biff built. This is the cement mixer that poured the cement to make the foundation in the excavation for the house that Biff built. This is the mason who laid the bricks to make the walls above the foundation of the house that Biff built. This is the roofer who rolled out the tar paper to make the roof on top of the walls above the foundation of the house that Biff built. These are the carpenters who hammered and sawed to make the rooms of the house that Biff built. These are the electricians who put in the wires for the electric lights to light up the rooms of the house that Biff built. This is the plumber who put in the pipes to carry the water into the kitchen and the bathroom of the house that Biff built. These are the painters who spackled the walls and painted them all to make the rooms pretty and finish the house that Biff built. These are the people who brought in all their things, their lamps and beds, tables and chairs, books and toys and teddy bears, and moved into the house that Biff built. And this is the party they had that night for the architect, the mason, the carpenters, the electricians, the plumbers, the painters, and all of the workers who worked so hard on the house that Biff built. All those people worked on it. What did Biff do? Thank you. The second book I'm going to read is a classic. It's called Casey at the Bat. And it's based on the poem by Ernest Lawrence Thayer. This is the story of a player who was the greatest of the great. He stood head and shoulders above all the other players, a giant, a tower of strength, and a true pillar of his team. Strong as an ox, endowed with a winning smile and the abilities of 10 lesser men, he was adored by many a fan. He was none other than the mighty Casey of the famous Mudville 9. This mighty Casey popped the stitches on more baseballs than most batters ever hit. Whenever he came to the plate, he would always let the first 2 pitches go by on purpose. Strike 1, strike 2. But when the time came for strike 3, Casey would tire of toying with the pitcher. Grim determination would set in. He'd grind his teeth together, and his furious glare said he wanted to murder the ball. Then came the pitch. Casey swung his bat with the power of a hurricane. When Casey's bat connected with the ball, hats blew off from the shock, and everyone ducked down low. Terrified birds flapped and people's peanuts flew out of their bags. If the ball didn't simply explode into a small cloud of horsehide flakes, it was found far outside the stadium, and when it was found at all, it wasn't hard to prove which balls were from mighty Casey's hits. They'd be completely flattened by his mighty bat. Casey was great, but his team as a whole was a different story. Poor Flynn was always getting the bat tangled in his oversized mustache. The bat would spin in the wind, and the confused Flynn would take off like an airplane. And as for Jimmy Blake, his nickname was Cake because he always crumbled at the plate. A favorite trick among the other players was to stick a match in Jimmy Blake's shoe while he was at bat. Then they'd light it to wake him up. Blake got his only hits when his shoe was on fire. Mighty Casey was the hero of the team that fateful season when the Mudville Nine tied for first place. Ah, yes, it was a proud team. A little shaky if it weren't for Casey, but a mighty proud team just the same. Proudest of all, of course, was Casey himself. It was the day of the great championship game. I'll tell you the story as it was told to me. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville Nine that day. The score stood 4-2 with but one more inning left to play. And then when Cooney died at first and Barrows did the same, a sickly silence fell upon the patrons of the game. A straggling few got up to go in deep despair. The rest clung to the hope which springs eternal in the human breast. They thought if only Casey could get but a whack at that, he'd put up even money now with Casey at the bat. But Flynn preceded Casey, as did also Jimmy Blake, and the former was a Lulu and the latter was a Cake. So upon that stricken multitude, grim melancholy sat, for there seemed but little chance of Casey getting to the bat. But Flynn let drive a single to the wonderment of all, and Blake, the much despised, tore the cover off the ball. And when the dust had lifted and the men saw what had occurred, there was Jimmy safe at second and Flynn a hugging third. Then from 5,000 throats and more there rose a lusty yell. It rumbled through the valley, it rattled in the dell. It knocked upon the mountain, it recoiled upon the flat. For Casey, mighty Casey, was advancing to the bat. There was ease in Casey's manner as he stepped up to the plate. There was pride in Casey's bearing and a smile on Casey's face. And when responding to the cheers, he lightly doffed his hat. No stranger in the crowd could doubt 'twas Casey at the bat. 10,000 eyes were on him as he rubbed his hands with dirt. 5,000 tongues applauded when he wiped them on his shirt. Then, while the writhing pitcher ground the ball into his hip, defiance gleamed in Casey's eye. A sneer curled Casey's lip. And now the leather-covered sphere came hurling through the air, and Casey stood a-watching it in haughty grandeur there. Close by the sturdy batsman, the ball unheeded sped. That ain't my style, said Casey. Strike one, the umpire said. From the benches, black with people, there went up a muffled roar, like the beating of the storm waves on a stern and distant shore. Kill him! Kill the umpire! Shouted someone in the stand, and it's likely they'd have killed him had not Casey raised his hand. With a smile of Christian charity, great Casey's visage shone. He stilled the rising tumult. He bade the game go on. He signaled to the pitcher, and once more the spheroid flew. But Casey still ignored it, and the umpire said, Strike two! Fraud! Cried the maddening thousands, and the echo answered, Fraud! But one scornful look from Casey, and the audience was awed. They saw his face grow stern and cold. They saw his muscles strain. And they knew that Casey wouldn't let the ball go by again. The sneer is gone from Casey's lip. His teeth are clenched in hate. He pounds with cruel violence his bat upon the plate. And now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go. And the air is shattered by the force of Casey's blow. Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out. The end. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Diane Nowd, and I'd like to share a wonderful book with you today called Jake the Growling Dog. Now, Jake was a sweet dog, but he was different, so he was kind of misunderstood until one day somebody does a random act of kindness with him, and it makes an enormous change in his life. So I hope you enjoy it. It's called Jake the Growling Dog, written by Samantha Shannon and illustrated by Kerry Joyce. In an emerald green forest in the Pacific Northwest, you'll find Jake, a misunderstood dog at best. He has fur like fresh cotton candy, large pointy ears, and a big bushy tail that gets puffier each year. He has a caramel coat, a chocolate stripe down his face, and each tasty shade is in just the right place. Jake is fast, quite fast they say, with a twitch and a spring as he goes on his way. Jake loves to run among the tallest of trees, swim in deep rivers, and chase after frisbees. But no matter what Jake loves to do, you'll always hear him growling too. He growls while he eats. Grrr. He growls while he plays, and he growls while being scratched in his favorite ear place. He growls while he sleeps. He growls while he swims. Grrr. And he growls in his bed while being tucked in. One day, Jake was hiking a trail lined with thistle, and two yellow warblers flew by with a whistle. "Why do you growl?" they said, looking sad. "What is it that always makes you so mad?" "I'm not bad," Jake growled cheerfully. "I'm just as happy as can be. I'm having fun out here on the trail, dashing around and wagging my tail. Grrr." "But Jake, don't you notice that animals run away and even the little children won't play?" Jake thought for a moment as he stopped for a sniff. Then he chewed on a perfectly good-looking stick. He growled while he thought, and with each snapping chew, his mind wandered back, and it wasn't good news. He growled at Molly when she scratched his ears. It was a growl of delight, but she ran off in fear. He growled at the neighbor's dog every day. "Hi, Mr. Pomeranian, do you want to play?" But the dog always left without a goodbye. Jake assumed that he was just shy. Jake didn't know why everyone was so scared. How could he show them how much he cared? They said it was his growly voice. Could it be? Did it make him sound that unfriendly? While lost in his thoughts, Jake bit down on his lip. He cried out in pain and whimpered a bit. Yet to the birds it was the scariest of growls. It sounded more like a frightening howl. Full of fear, they took flight from the trees, leaving nothing but the falling flutter of leaves. Why doesn't anyone understand me? Why can't they see I'm not actually mean? But nobody answered because Jake was alone, by himself in the forest, all on his own. Then he heard a faint whispering call. Maybe he wasn't alone after all. "Up here, Jake the Growling Dog, I know. Your growl is your voice. You're just saying hello." Jake looked around. He looked up. He looked down. He became quite dizzy spinning around. Zooming above at spectacular speeds, a flicker of blackness flew through the trees. He was a lone black squirrel, nearly too swift to see, Jake couldn't find her. She was so fast indeed. I like you, Jake. You have a big heart, I can see. Really, that's all that's important to me. But others are scared, Jake said with a growl. Playing just isn't that fun on my own. I'll help you, squeaked the squirrel from the tree. We'll work on your growl to make it friendly. Grrr. So, Jake and the squirrel, whose name was Neat, spent days trying to make his voice sound sweet. Neat begged other animals to help with their training, but it took plenty of urging and they just kept complaining. A painted turtle stayed in her shell for a week after Neat tried to have the two of them meet. A black-tailed deer was so frightened by him that she bucked about wildly and started to spin. Then there was the bufflehead duck that heard Jake. He let out a squawk and flew out of the lake. Oh, what's the use, cried Jake in despair. They don't understand me. They don't even care. Then something magical happened no one could quite explain as more and more animals watched them each day. They watched from shadows, ferns, and high perched in trees, from lakes, from rocks, and trickling streams. The more they watched, the more they could see that Jake was just misunderstood, they agreed. Jake was kind. He was sweet. Though he growled all day, he was different, they noticed, which was more than okay. Soon dogs played with him, and owners and children too. They scratched his ears and gave him treats to chew. They played with him with balls and sticks, and even taught him cool new tricks. Grrr. Jake was happier than he'd ever been, so he growled the greatest of growls, one that shook his body and ruffled his fur, sending off sweet cotton candy smells. But then he stopped short. Did he scare his new friends? He winced when he thought, oh no, not again. Yet when he opened his eyes, his friends hadn't strayed. They smiled and laughed, ready to play. We're all different, and that's okay. It makes us unique in our own special way. Grrr. The end. I hope you enjoyed it. And from what I understand, there are several more books about Jake and his friends, and you might want to look at your library for them.
Thank you for watching Lunenburg Storytime, the books we love. If you'd like to get involved and become a reader, we'd love to have you come into our studio and read a book that you love. Our contact information is lunenburgaccess@gmail.com. So send us an email today and let us know if you'd like to become a reader. Thank you.